All right. Well, with that, let's get started. My name is Chris Lema. I'm our VP of Products here at Liquid Web. And today we're talking about why WooCommerce should be the basis for your next e-commerce project. And of course, we can't start that without highlighting that you do have options, right? So the people that say, oh, it's only WooCommerce, there's nothing but WooCommerce, it makes you sound a little silly, and you don't want to ever be in that spot. The reality is you have a lot of options. And so if you just look at this screen, there's a whole list. Obviously, there's even more than this list, right? But BigCartel, CraftCommerce, SQUARESPACE, Volusion, Shopify, BigCommerce, and of course, WooCommerce. And what I want to do for just a few minutes, right, while we are together here, is to talk to you a little about some of these other platforms so that you have an understanding of where they fit in the ecosystem from my perspective, because they all are good at something, right? And so a lot of times when you're choosing, why would I choose WooCommerce? It shouldn't just be your default, right? You should really understand what are all the options and when does each platform make sense. And depending on who you are and where you're coming from, whether you're a really small store owner or a larger store owner, whether you're a freelancer or agency, you're going to discover that any one of these might be right for you at some point. It's just important that you understand the lay of the land. So let's start with BigCartel. All right. BigCartel is basically a hosted solution for when you're tired of using Etsy, right? So if you are selling a few items, if you have a very, very small budget, you still want a little bit of control. And most importantly, right, you want your own URL, right? That's maybe the biggest deal, right? You've been playing with Etsy, and what you realize, right, and this is a little bit like selling on Amazon, is your product is sitting square in the middle because you brought the traffic. Maybe you paid Facebook ads or you paid Instagram ads, and you paid to get the traffic over to you, and they're looking at your leather bag or your leather knapsack or whatever it is that you're selling. And then right next to you are all your competitors, right? Here's some other things you may want to look at. Here are other stores you may want to check out. And you're going, oh, I don't like paying that money to bring customers over only to let them go somewhere else. And so you say, okay, I'm done with Etsy. I want something different, and I just want to keep the price down, but I want to run it at a domain that I control, right? And so BigCartel, very inexpensive, maybe the right shot for you, right? Now, there's another solution out there, and if you are a PHP developer or you have a PHP developer that you work with a lot, and they say, hey, I wanna do this, right? And you don't want WordPress related, right? So you know, the reality is there's people out there who hear, oh, WooCommerce is sitting on top of WordPress, and WordPress was built for a blog, and so, you know, WooCommerce doesn't work that way. I just don't want it. But of course, your developer's PHP. Then you go, okay, I need to do something different. Craft CMS and Craft Commerce are solutions that have been out for a little bit, and a PHP developer will look at this and go, okay, and the front end is TWIG, so you go, yeah, I can code this, I can build you out a new store, right? And it's not going to be WordPress at all, and there are people who do this, right? And so you go, okay, that's fine. The thing to note, right, about Craft Commerce is, of course, it is not a hosted solution, so you need to bring your own hosting to the table, and that may be just fine, right? But especially if you're working with a developer, or if you are a developer and you're like, look, I know a lot of people who have developers that do work and they say, oh, I'm a PHP developer. Turns out maybe they've never done anything WordPress, they've never done anything WooCommerce. And for those folks, when they try and jam their features into WooCommerce or WordPress, for example, just because they know PHP, it doesn't always play well. Well, this is an opportunity for them to potentially play better in that space, right? So Craft Commerce is an option out there to look at, right? The one that a lot of people look at and more over the last year, right? When you want something that looks pretty, right? And you're going, oh, I'm not selling just one item or two items, you know, but you do have a little bit of budget, and visual control is what you care about, right, then Squarespace and their particular e-commerce approach may be right for you, right? I know many folks in the last 12 to 18 months who have said, hey, I'm gonna check this thing out. Now, the challenge is that it's not really a place for custom features. It's not really a place where you have a bunch of extensions. So one of the things I recommend is that you go check it out if you're going to bring a store onto Squarespace, and just make sure that the features you need are the features they have, right? If so, you're perfect, right? A friend of mine runs a coffee shop. It's a physical place. So when she spun up her website, she went and spun it up on Squarespace, and that was great. She had no problems. She loved it. It was easy. She could edit her content. The look was what she cared about, and that was perfect. And then she wanted to get into shipping beans, right? And create one of those services where people could sign up every month and get a new bag of coffee beans. And then she said, where's the button for turning on subscriptions? And I said, it's inside of WooCommerce, right? Like, and you don't want to do that unless it's your friends, right? Because that's not nice. But Squarespace doesn't play in that space, right? That's just not what they're doing, right? Another friend of mine was like, hey, how do I do membership sites on Squarespace? And I'm like, where's the setting for that, right? And again, you're like, well, it's inside of WooCommerce. The reality is, if Squarespace has the features you need, then you're set, you're golden. If you're trying to do something that it doesn't do, there's not a extensive ecosystem for you to bring that code in. And so you're left with, okay, as long as the platform does what I need it to do, I'm gonna be a happy camper. If you grow, you may grow out of using that. But it is beautiful, it is visual, it is not super expensive, so you can have a small budget and still work, and that is great. The next one we're looking at is Volusion, and it is one of the more feature-packed solutions out there. And I mean, like, it goes all in. It has everything. So you're like, oh, do you want a mobile app to run your store? Boom. Do you want, newsletters to send out? Why have an additional MailChimp? I was talking to a guy the other day who's like, oh, I had, 200,000 people from my free plugin I was selling a digital product that was the pro version, but my free plugin was people were signing up left and right. And so all of a sudden I have 200,000 people in my MailChimp list, and it's costing me way more money than I wanted to spend, right? And Volusion is one of those places where you go, no, you're not paying for that. If you want points and reward program, right, you're not paying extra for that. And if you want purchase orders, right, if you're going up to enterprises and the ability to send out a PO, tons of payment gateways, and it's hosted, Volusion is one of those where you go, I'd heard the name at some point. I hadn't realized what was there. Maybe I go check it out, right? So Volusion is one of those that you go, it's in the running, right? It's a legit player that does legit stuff. And you go, yeah, it absolutely does. And again, because it's full featured, often you find people that go there and they just go, I don't need anything else, right? I don't need to add more stuff. Of course, if you're a store owner or you're a developer that works with store owners that has custom and unique needs, then you find yourself in a little bit more challenged position because it's a hosted solution, right? And then, of course, comes the name. These are the folks that you have likely heard of, right? If you do a Google search on e-commerce, they equate e-commerce and Shopify as synonyms, right? So they're just like, boom, you were probably wondering about Shopify. They have been growing consistently for several years. They have not only a base product, but Shopify Plus, right, for the larger stores. The jump from, say, $300 up to $2,400 a month can be a big jump in hosting. It is a hosted platform, but you don't need to be a web developer, right? And that's maybe the biggest selling point of Shopify is you don't need to be a developer at all, right? If you're a store owner, you're like, boom, click some buttons, pick some stuff, and you're off and running. And that is incredibly enticing to a lot of people, right? All that benefit comes at a price, right? And those are transaction fees. And if you start becoming a very successful store, you will notice that your margins are shrinking because of how much you're spending on transaction fees. So you have to know that going in. And a lot of people go, yeah, that's a problem I would like to have. So I'll just start now and chase after this, right? And if it grows and I get to that point, well, then I'll solve it then. And that is totally your prerogative, right? You can totally do that. But you just know going into it, hey, you should also know going into it, right? Like if you're doing multi lingual websites where you're spinning up different localizations because your store is in different countries, you're going to end up spinning multiple accounts up for Shopify, right? They don't have a perfect solution for that. And what I like to tell people is the report last year that came out was that the average price, the average spend on the $29 plan per month was $89 per month. And you go, wait, I'm so confused by that sentence. What does that mean? Well, what it means is people sign up for the $29 plan, and the average person who signs up for the $29 plan goes, oh, wait, I want a little pop-up that does exit intent. And you go, that's $15 a month. And you go, hold on, I want a page builder to design my pages to look better, even though I bought this nice theme. And you go, okay, well, that's $19. And these are not $15 once and $19 once. They're $15 a month and $19 a month. And then you go, oh, I want to use a coupon that works this way. And you go, that's $10 a month. And I want to send out, printed PDF invoices, and that's $9 a month. And so then it starts to make sense. Yeah, the average price, right, of the person, the average spend of the person who bought the $29 a month plan is $89, because that $60 extra a month is in the form of a lot of different plugins that you're buying and paying for every single month. The nice thing is it's all included in your regular bill. The bummer is it's every single month, right? So people who complain in the WordPress and WooCommerce world where you're like, $89, right? $89, I got to pay you, right? And then they're like, oh, and I'm going to have to renew next year. And you go, yeah, but it's not, that's a very different dynamic than if you're paying $89 every single month, right? So Shopify can get a little pricier. The other thing to note about Shopify is it is a hosted solution, which is very pro for a lot of people, right? When you start seeing comparisons between Shopify and WooCommerce, and it's feature match, feature match, feature match, feature match, and then with WooCommerce, it goes, oh, but you got to take care of all the hosting. Shopify, you're done, right? They have their own service, and that's awesome. But it also means you don't control those servers. So for my buddy who runs a t-shirt store, right? He was like, my server's really, really, really slow. And I said, okay, let's see your site. And we go to pull up a site, and we're on fast Wi-Fi, right? In Southern California, we're not sitting here in some remote place, or we're not in the middle of, Disneyland with, millions of people. We're just at a regular house with really good Wi-Fi. We go to pull up the Shopify, his store, t-shirt store, and it is seconds upon seconds upon seconds to load. And I said, well, did you call them? Right? Like, just call them. They have a server farm. They should just be able to move you, because we called, they didn't do anything, right? There's nothing, it just is what it is. And that's where it gets hard, right? Because for as awesome as it is for people who are non-technologists, when you actually hit a technology problem, it's the infrastructure is just not designed for you to start getting involved in the technology, right? To start saying, hey, I want to be moved to a different server. I want more capacity. I want more whatever. So unfortunately for my friend, right, revenue started to dip because, as you likely know, you can't have a slow store and still be making all the sales you want, right? So speed is critical, and you don't control that when you don't control the servers, right? So anyway, there are some really good reasons to buy Shopify and to host there. There are also some challenges that you should go in eyes open, knowing, okay, these are some of the issues, but it's a solid platform. Another solid platform, right, is BigCommerce, right? And BigCommerce has really good SEO, right? They're good at inventory management, right? It is a hosted platform, so they take care of a lot of that stuff for you. And maybe the most important thing is their API is really powerful. So it can do just about anything you've ever wanted, right? It is difficult to know exactly who they're pricing for. It used to be lower price, and then a couple of years ago they pushed their prices up, and it was massive push up. So we saw a lot of people leave because they were like, this is way too expensive for me. But then they start bringing the prices down to match Shopify. So it is not clear which part of the market they're in. The API used to only be available for the really more expensive plans, but the API is rich enough that you think this is really for enterprises, but now they're making it available for other people. So it is not clear to me yet who exactly is their perfect customer. But when you find that you're their perfect customer, there's a lot to be said for BigCommerce, right? A lot of things that are going there that are good and solid. They've just recently announced a new tighter integration with WordPress, which again is another way to think about how you might do that. So that leverages their API. So there's a lot that can be said that is really good about BigCommerce to check out. And that's, I think the real question is figuring out where are they going to fit in the competition with all these other players that we're looking at, right? And when they figure that out and get that honed in, then you're going to be like, wow, okay, that's really cool. Now, like I said, those aren't the only ones, right? THERE-ECWID is out there, 3D-Cart is out there, and several others. The truth is, THERE-ECWID has a totally free plan, right? But you're going to end up in a situation where you're like, oh, but there's no support. So you would just look at BigCartel instead. 3D-Cart has a plan, but there's limits there. You likely would look at Shopify instead. So I just pulled some of these out of the list because it just didn't make sense. There are other alternatives that are better, right? And speaking of alternatives, right, acting like there are none will make you look silly, right? So don't be that person, right, who says it's, WooCommerce can do everything and there's no reason to use anything else. That's just not true. There are a lot of good platforms out there, a lot of things you can check out. And the thing to note is there are some really good reasons to check out WooCommerce, right? And that's what we're going to spend the second half of this presentation on, right, with the webinar with you, is to talk through the core issues why, right? Why WooCommerce? The first one, as you can imagine, is price, right? The plugin WooCommerce is free, right? And you go, yeah, hold on a second though, nothing's free. And you go, well, WooCommerce is free, and you can get certain themes that work with it that are free, and you can even get some payment gateways that are free, right? So can you run a store without spending much money, right? Sure, you could. Now, in the end, you're going to come back to, what if I want this and what if I want that? I want this feature, I want this look, I want this new way to engage customers. Yeah, you're going to spend a little money, right? But there are also other extensions that are free, right? And you go to WordPress.org and you go into the plugin repo and you do a search on WooCommerce, and you'll find a bunch of other features in there that you can install into your platform, right, for free. So that's a big deal, right? When you're just like, wait, seriously, so you're telling me that I could get a good, high-performing, lightweight theme for free, right? Storefront, the baseline is free. Astra, the baseline is free. I can get WooCommerce and WordPress, both of which are plugin. Well, WordPress and its plugin WooCommerce for e-commerce, both of which are free. And I can go back into the repository on WordPress.org and get more features, and they're free. And you go, yeah. So you want to start something new, you want to try something, you want to check it out, you can start for basically sweat equity, right? Whatever it is you're going to put into it, whatever energy you're going to invest, that's going to be your cost. That's a big deal, right? When you're comparing everybody else, there's something really valuable to be said for, hey, I have a new idea, a new concept, I want to try it out. The price is important. Now, if you have a really fantastic store, you're generating a lot of income, price isn't a big deal to you, right? And that's okay, right? This isn't the only reason to look at it. But for people who are just getting started, right, it can be a really big barrier to entry when you suddenly are like $89 a month for an idea that I thought might work. That's not where you want to go, right? The second reason to check it out is community. The code is free, the code's available, the code you can download, and you could live your life without ever talking to anybody else. But the reality is the community makes it really incredibly valuable, right? Any question you have about WooCommerce, you can go to Google, ask the question, and you'll find tutorials. You'll find articles written. You'll find videos created, right? Ton of resources that are available to you for free, right? Just because there is a massive community around the project. And that's a big deal. Because when you go to some other, spaces and you're like, how do I do this? And it's chirp, chirp, there's nothing, there's no videos, there's no articles, or the last article written was in, 2013. And you go, who knows if this is even accurate anymore, right? You don't want to live in that world. So the community for WooCommerce is a big selling point. Modularity, right? There are hundreds of different extensions that change the nature of how your e-commerce store works, right? You can say, okay, I want to do digital signatures, no problem. I want to do multi-step quote systems, no problem. I want to, put a form in the middle of the checkout process related to this product to customize the product so that I can collect additional data so that I can give you a customized and really special product, no problem, right? I mean, it's just crazy how much you can do without writing a lot of code, right? And so you see people all the time, right? I worked with a customer maybe 2-3 years ago who was creating a bakery where, an online bakery shop where she still had the retail shop, but she wanted you to be able to go online, pick every aspect of your birthday cake, colors, the piping around it, the levels, and like how many people it was going to feed, and then what you put on top, right? And as you're picking these things, it's creating visually what your new cake's going to look like, and then pay and check out, and then you just go pick it up in a week. And you go, okay, that must have all been custom code. And the reality was she was coming to us because she wanted some custom code, but she had a version running with, she just connected some Gravity forms and some WooCommerce together and done some things and created an image. And you're like, that's impressive, right? So there's a lot you can do when you take all the different extensions, both free and premium, and put it together and change the way your store works, right? Another, valuable component, a big reason why you want to look at WooCommerce is they are the big market share player in e-commerce, 4 million stores running on WooCommerce. So when a third party, when an outside vendor, right, says we're going to get into e-commerce, one of the first boxes they're going to check is WooCommerce. And we see it all the time, right? So Pitney Bowes is a company that had built a calculator. It's an online calculator that helps you know what the tariffs will be when you go from one country to another, when you're shipping a product from one country to another. So let's say you're up in, you're looking at a store and you see these beautiful shoes and you want to buy them and they're $100. And you go, yeah, I want to buy it. Well, but they're in Toronto, right? In Toronto, Canada, and you happen to be, I don't know, in California somewhere. And so they have to cross the border. And there is a fee, a tax that has to get calculated via customs for bringing that product in, but it's nowhere on the website, right? And it has to be calculated. And if you don't pay it through there, then you just get it automatically billed. And so now your card, you're suddenly looking at going, whoa, that was way more expensive for a pair of shoes than I thought it was. Or because you haven't paid it, there's a delay in getting it shipped. And so Pitney Bowes says, we've built this whole thing, right? We can we calculate the fees, we can integrate it in, we do this. We now want to get it out into the world, right? And you go, okay, how can I help you? They're like, well, we want to get it into WooCommerce, right? We want to create an extension for WooCommerce. It was their first application. The first place they were going to take that and put it into any e-commerce platform wasn't BigCommerce, wasn't Shopify. The first one was WooCommerce. And you go, yeah, well, that makes sense because WooCommerce has a massive number of stores, right? So when companies are first entering the market, they look at WooCommerce. When companies have entered the market and they want to make sure they cover all the main players, WooCommerce is in the list. It's an important dynamic because if you're like, oh, well, I spun up a site on BigCartel and now I want to use a barcode reader for my POS system, and you go, oh, it doesn't support your platform, right? The other day I was talking to a gal who is just starting her online store and selling products, but she had already gone and set up her payment gateway and connected that to a POS system and connected that to her merchant account. So she'd done all this work other than the store, and she now wants to connect the dots. And this is what happens a lot, right? People think of their payment gateway, their bank account, even their point of sale. They think about those as business decisions unrelated to their online store. So they go and make all that happen. And then we get on this quick call, and she's like, well, how do I connect the dots between, my website and all this other stuff? And because it was WooCommerce, we're like, oh, here, let's go look online, see, oh yeah, they have this plugin, they have this extension, they have this little code to put this together, and you're good. If we'd had that conversation and she'd done all this stuff, and then she said, I'm using Volusion, right? I'd be like, the code doesn't exist. Like, you'd have to pay custom code to connect the dots between this platform and all the decisions you already made. In that scenario, you pick the platform, and then you have to go with them and say, you tell me, Mr. Platform, right, what you work with, so I only pick from those options. With WooCommerce, it's the other way around, right? WooCommerce has enough market share that just about anything you pick is going to find its way back to connecting to WooCommerce. All right. Another reason, right, you're going to look at WooCommerce is because they have an incredible array of payment gateways. Now, there's some out there, some of the other platforms that do have a good amount of payment gateways. So I'm not saying these are the only people that have it, but there are more than 100 different ways to get paid with WooCommerce, right? And that's awesome, because if you happen to have a customer that is in another country that uses a very specific payment gateway, WooCommerce likely supports it. If you're spinning up something, I once had a customer who was in Canada and took Amex, but wanted to take the US version of Amex, even though they were located in Canada. And you go, wait, that's so, how do you do this, right? And then you go in and go, oh, yeah, here, there's an extension that lets you do this. That's crazy, right? So one of the reasons you choose WooCommerce is because, frankly, all the payment gateways, or I shouldn't say all, so very many of the payment gateways that you might be interested in have already been created. And all you have to do is just buy it and plug it in, and you don't have to think about it again. That's a big deal. Okay. When we talk about discoverability, what we're really talking about is how well someone can go to Google and do a search and arrive at your store. One of the interesting things, in early 2018, I got one of those reports that comes when Shopify has to make their announcements because they're a public company, and so they publish their reports. You start reading through the reports, and one of the interesting things out of Shopify was literally how much of the traffic to their platform came from social, right? Instagram and Facebook. And the truth is, right, that a lot of that traffic was paid traffic, right? What we call paid social. So if you've ever seen this, right, you can go to Instagram or you can go to Facebook and you can sponsor a post, and that puts it into a place where more people get to see it. And then they get one link, one click, and you go back to the store. The thing was, as you were reading through this, you go, why is it that Shopify has so much, like ridiculous volume of traffic, right? More than 80% of the traffic was coming from these social sites. And you go, that's crazy. Have they, isn't there Google, right? Shouldn't a lot of traffic to stores come from Google? And in the case of the Shopify platform and what they were announcing and addressing, the data wasn't there, right? And you go, that's weird. When I think of all the things I've bought from Facebook, right, looking at a photo and going, oh, I like that. And of course they do the retargeting, so they show it to me over and over until I wear down and I go, yes, I must have that, right? More often than not, I end up at a site that is Shopify, and I go, okay, I get that, right? The ads on Facebook are taking me back over here. That's paid social. It makes sense. I get it. But the bigger question is, why didn't I find that when I was just doing a Google search, right? There's nothing super magical about WordPress that makes it good for SEO. The truth is other platforms can do it too. It's just good quality markup. WordPress has a little pingback that may help when something gets refreshed, but there's no good reason that other platforms can do it. But WordPress has consistently been focused on making sure that the themes that sit on WordPress and that hold your content play well with Google, and Google understands and plays well with WordPress, and WooCommerce sits on top of WordPress. And so a lot of the stuff that happened with WordPress carried on into WooCommerce to make sure that ratings and reviews and product descriptions and events and everything else you might put in your WooCommerce store have the appropriate schema for Google to pick up. And what that means, right, for discoverability is when you use WooCommerce, you know that content is going to get scooped up by Google. And ultimately, right, it means your customers can discover you through Google, not just because you're paying for ads to bring them over to you. Performance, right? This is one of those where you hear people say stuff like, hey, you know, I like WooCommerce, but it's not really for high performing stores, right? And I go, no, I disagree with you. When you configure it right, when you know what you're doing, WooCommerce performs very, very well, right? So I've worked on stores, right? Last year, we worked on a store where we were with a few tweaks. We're not talking about months and months of coding. We're talking about 2 to 3 days of doing some work. And we got the store to push through in terms of volume, $250,000 in 2 hours of work, right? And 2 hours of being online. And you go, that's an incredible volume. And you go, yeah. The bigger issue was making sure that all those products, right, tennis shoes, right, get put in boxes, get wrapped up, and get shipped, right? Your delivery is a bigger issue. Your shipping and all of your back end work is hard to get that many products out the door. But it wasn't an e-commerce site problem, right? I have worked with a whole team of people who got a lipstick store to start pushing 2,000 add to cart events through per minute. Now, when people talk about performance and they're like, oh, you should look at Magento if you want a serious store, I'll tell you, I know for a fact that most stores don't do 2,000 add to cart per minute. That's just a massive quantity, a massive volume, and we know that WooCommerce can do it. So the core of the issue is you gotta know what's there, you gotta know what you need to tweak, or you gotta choose platforms that are optimized for that. But trust me when I tell you, WooCommerce can do it, right? Can handle it, no problem. All right, and the last reason, right, is that whether you want a regular online store shipping physical products, or you want a multi-vendor marketplace, or you're building a membership site, or you want an online course, it doesn't matter. You don't need to have one platform for one and one platform for another. WooCommerce supports all of them, right? I worked on in the last year, right, 2 remarkably different sites, right? One site that was selling wrestling shoes and another that was selling virtual online course. And you could not get, right, 2 more different stores up and running, both having 100,000 plus launches in a week, right? I mean, just fantastic revenue for each of these stores. They're doing great. They're performant, but they're not alike at all. And yet the underlying code base, right, in both cases is WooCommerce, right? And that's why I say, hey, if you know e-commerce, right, and you understand what you're doing and you're working through it, the reality is you can do a lot of things with WooCommerce. Not saying it's the only platform, right? But those are some of the reasons why I would tell you, if you're starting an e-commerce store in 2019, you really should check out WooCommerce. Like I said, my name is Chris Lema. I'm a VP of products over here at Liquid Web. You can find me online at Chris Lema. And now we're going to open it up for questions. So if you have a question, there is a little panel on the right side of your GoToWebinar, and you can put questions in there, and I should be able to see them, and then I should be able to give you answers. So one of the questions I'm getting here is about cost, and specifically as it relates to the statement I was making on if the average is $89 for 29, what's the average spend for WooCommerce? And the truth is, it totally depends on your store and where you're hosting, right? So people can host a WooCommerce store for as little as $8, $10, $15, and they can spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month in hosting, right? So totally depends. But what I can tell you is, the research we did and what we were working on was we saw stores that were generating $300,000 on average, $300,000 a year on WooCommerce, and they were spending in the ballpark of $99 to $150 a month in hosting. And we saw a bunch of stores that were generating $10 to $11 million in revenue a year, and they were spending between $750 and $1,000 a month in hosting. So hopefully that data point makes sense, and we can, you can use that for making the decisions you want. At Liquid Web, we have several different price points to help you get started. Lisa says she's working on a bakery and creating cakes, so she's working on something very similar. That's very cool, Lisa. That is awesome. I hope that it goes really well. The next question is there a page with a summary of all the payment gateways that can be used with WooCommerce? Yes. If you go to WooCommerce.com and you go into their extensions, one of the categories is payment gateways, and you will see a whole list of payment gateways. It's multiple pages of payment gateways, right? So hopefully that will help you. Michael says, we sell artwork, frame, and size configurations and end up with 500 variations, right? Is WooCommerce a good fit? It can be, right? How you do those variations, though, could be really, really different, right? You don't necessarily need to create a variation for every one of those products, right? And it just depends on how you want to think about pricing that. So yes, we have seen stores that, literally do this. Okay, every variation is going to drive a price, and then they put it together. And so in the end, you end up with a composite product and a composite price, and you go, there you go. That's, first pick the size of the image, then pick the size of the framing, pick maybe the version of frames, right? What kind of frame you want, molded, not molded, and pick your color, and then boom, you get a price. Alternatively, we've seen folks that are not playing in the configuration play, and what they do is they just collect a lot of that data via form, and then even though there are different variations, the prices aren't tied deeply to each variation, and so that you can still end up calculating at the end of that a price that you pass back to WooCommerce. So you can do that with a form. And then, of course, there are configurator plugins, right? Extensions that work often for things like automotive car part sites, but in your case with framing, that could also be something that you use. And in those part configurators, right, you can do dependency chaining, where you go pick one of these, and then based on that, pick one of these. And as you move it through, you get to your final price. So a lot of different ways to chase after that and go after that. And WooCommerce would do well with most of those. Pretty much all of those. I will say, when you get into a lot of variations, the real trick is doing the work to make sure your site's still performing well. So what of that is cacheable, what isn't, how to use object cache. There's a lot of technical stuff that goes into that. So it'd be worth getting a good developer involved, right? MJ says, so where is Woo making their money, right? Seems like a lot of value for little cost. You'd be right there. There is a ton of value for little cost. The folks behind WooCommerce Automatic, who are heavily focused there, have WooCommerce.com And what you'll notice is there's a lot of premium extensions, right? So people are spending money on lots of little extensions, right? Yes, there are other extensions that are free over at WordPress.org, but most people think, oh, if I want an extension, I'm going to go to WooCommerce.com. And when you get there, you realize, ooh, there's a lot of stuff here that I pay for, right? And so that's how they make a lot of their money. And most of that is subscription based, right? So when you buy an extension for your store, you can license it for 1 store, 5 store, 10 store, stuff like that. But even for that 1 store, you're going to sign up and be in a recurring model where you pay every year a small amount. Now, again, comparatively speaking, and I want to make sure we're really clear, even a plugin that says it costs $199, right? First of all, it's $199 for a year. Second of all, right, if you think about how much time to code all the features and all the different features that are in that plugin, $199 is nothing. If you call me and you say, hey, I want a custom plugin built for my store, it does these things, you're going to get price tags, right? I've been in this space a really long time. I have a lot of agencies I know. All those price tags are going to be $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 US, right? To build you a custom, and then you go, oh, wait, I can get it for $199. It's all about understanding what it really costs to build that, and then what you're paying when you get it. So, and that doesn't even include being able to call someone and get support. So the prices at WooCommerce.com, even when you're like, oh, wait, that's not free, they're ridiculously inexpensive compared to the value that's being delivered there. All right, we're going to see if there's any other questions. These have been great ones. John says, can you recommend resources to lead a customer through setting up a store? Start with inventory, start with front-end presentations, start with delivery options, payment portals. Oh, John, that's a great question. So first of all, WP 101 has a course for WooCommerce with a bunch of stuff there for a store owner. Definitely check out WP 101. If you're hosting with Liquid Web, we take that course and then just embed it. You don't have to pay for it over there because it's just part of what we embed in our plans, right? And our lowest plan, I think, is $39 a month. So you can sign up and get that right there. But if you're not with us, you can totally just go straight to WP 101 and get those resources. If it were me, right, one of the first things I would start with is your payment gateway. I know that sounds weird because you're like, wait, what about inventory, or what about front end, or what about? Here's the thing. If you live in a place where PayPal and Stripe work great, then you don't really have to worry. But if you live somewhere else and you do all that work and you pick themes and plugins and inventory management, you do all this stuff and then realize, oh, it doesn't work for the payment gateways in my country, you're done with it. You got to start all over again. So I normally say, hey, start with your payment gateway. Make sure that you get that clear, right? Stripe plus PayPal, Authorize.net plus PayPal, right? Normally try and go with 2, one of them being PayPal because that's just free extra money, right? But start with the payment gateway, right? Then go into, hey, is my inventory simple enough? Or am I going to do I expect high volume and high complexity on managing inventory? Then I'd look at a partner like TradeGecko or someone else to say, okay, who's going to help me with the inventory management? Because I want to basically manage the complexity there, especially if you have multiple stores, which we see people do. So if your inventory is unique and customized and has a lot of requirements to it, I would start looking there. What you're really doing is saying, start at the places that quickly narrow your options, right? So you go, oh, this payment gateway is going to limit what I can do, or this inventory system is going to limit what I can do. Whereas, the theme options and, how it looks and what products you're putting in, those all open up possibilities for you. They don't necessarily constrain you the same way. So start with constraining factors, check those off, and then go to the rest. Hopefully that makes sense, John. And Lisa thanks me, and I thank you for being here, Lisa, and for asking these great questions. And with that, I will remind you again, we have recorded this. Oh, Richard's like, TradeGecko? Yes, TradeGecko. If you do a Google search on that, they are an inventory management system. They're a SaaS, right, that just plays the inventory game all day long. And if you're doing simple inventory, you can do that in WooCommerce. If you're doing a lot of complexity, you'd want to take a look at them. So I want to end by reminding you, hey, heads up, this has been recorded and we will get it to you sometime before close of business tomorrow. Thank you so much for being here, for listening, and hope that you have a great time either running your own e-commerce store or building someone else's. Take care.